As you join in, just let us know who you are and where you're from. Just use the chat function to communicate with us. Oh, wow, we've got people from Queenstown, KZN, Johannesburg, Northwest. Oh, wow, wow, this is amazing. Bethlehem, Bosburg, Cape Town, Elizabeth, Wits University, Limpopo, Grahamstown, Pretoria, Botswana, Krugerrands. Oh, that's interesting. Rustenburg, Western Cape, Stellenbosch, Eastern Cape, Centurion. Is that Mafikeng? Okay, so thank you so much for everyone for joining us. So today, we have this webinar talk on managing your finances and exploring your financial options. My name is Petronella, the co-director of the Personal and Professional Development Portfolio at Golden Key UCT. So joining us today, our speaker is Landiwe Ntlokwana, an entrepreneur and founding director of a professional financial consulting company, GTT Wealth. So Landiwe is very passionate about enriching educational experiences of students from poor rural communities through her nonprofit organization, ML Centers of Excellence. She has extensive experience in investment services and a regular speaker at women's conferences, community forums, and global events. Her hobbies include swimming, hiking, and then running the 2 Oceans Marathon, and also preparing gourmet meals for a family of 2. So she will do her presentation, and then towards the end, there will be time for you to ask any questions. So remember to use the Q&A tab to post your questions, and we'll try as much as possible to answer your questions live. So now I'm going to hand it over to Landi. Thank you so much, Landi, for agreeing to do this. So yeah, Landi.
Thank you so much, Petronella, and good evening to all the students and all the alumni of Golden Key. When I got this invite, I was really excited because I'm a Golden Key member myself, and I joined when I was still a student at UCT. So I'm very excited about interacting with all of you today. I'm not going to waste any time. I'm going to share my screen so that we're all on the same page. So I have a question for all of you tonight. It's well and good to talk about money, but why? You know, why are you all interested in attending this talk? Why are you all interested in budgeting? Why is it important that you make money one day? And it's important to start there because we all have what we call a money history. We sometimes have money traumas, which are events that trigger the way we behave with money. A money trauma would consist of having grown up with not having money. And so you end up having a terrible relationship with money, for example, because you're always worried about being in lack. Another money trauma could be, in my situation, having grown up with my parents looking like they've got money, but they were highly indebted. And it was only a matter of time before we lost everything, because my dad lost his job, and what we thought was money was actually a lifestyle financed by debt. So I want to ask you, what's your why? Why do you want financial stability? Why do you think it's important to budget, in inverted commas? Why do you think it's important to save money? Why do you think it's important to give back into society, for those of you who believe in it? You know, so that's always the starting point for me. Why is it important for you to be sitting in this talk today? And that's something you have to answer yourself. But what I will tell you is that where there is no vision, people perish. Now, the image that you see is on the right-hand side, what I would call the Joneses, or the Nkosis, however way you want to put it. But these are the people that we so often call influencers, in inverted commas, or however we want to refer to them. These are the people we see with flashy cars. These are the people that we see taking photos on Instagram with the latest clothing. You know, you name it, you know what I'm talking about. But when you look at the foundation of their finances, most of their lifestyle is financed by debt. And I know a lot of you who live in Joburg probably have a better picture of this, because we graduate from UCT, we rush to buy the biggest Range Rover we can afford, to park it. Can I get an indication from someone? Can you still hear me?
Sorry, Landy, we lost you for a moment, but you're back now.
Okay, sorry about that. So what I was still saying with regards to this vision is that when you don't have one, you end up financing someone else's vision. And the image on the right portrays that. So I have no problem with creditors. I really don't. I don't have a problem with banks. I just believe that their services, especially their credit division, when you go there and you can't afford that car, or you can't afford those groceries and you buy them on credit, or you can't afford those clothes and you buy them on credit, I believe that people who offer credit are people who have a vision for people who don't have a vision for their lives. So if you don't have your own vision, someone else will dictate how you must spend your money. And that person often comes in the form of a plastic card called credit. What we don't see often is the image on the left-hand side. These are the people who build in silence. These are the people that after graduating will just get a basic car to get them around, to see clients, etc. You know, while they build a solid financial foundation for themselves. They actually pay themselves first at the end of the month. They take whatever they have, 10% into savings, 10% into doing good or charity or whatever, 10% for the long-term investing, and they live off about 70% of their income. And that's why they look like they aren't going anywhere in life. But these are the people that will normally put down half a deposit, half for the market, the cost value of their houses. These are the people that can buy cars cash. These are the people that can enjoy holidays that other people can't. And it's difficult being in that space. It's not the easiest. And I draw on my personal life experiences. when I graduated, I didn't have a fancy car. My husband got his first car as a gift from his parents. And when we entered the gate, you could actually even hear the car from, geez, almost like, I don't know, 150 meters away from the house. It was a terrible car. And whenever we'd attend braais for with our friends and stuff, they'd literally say, why don't you leave your car at home? We'll pick you up. Because our car just didn't match the standard of lifestyle that they all lived. And over the years, we knew what we were getting ourselves into. We had a clearly written plan. We knew when we wanted to buy our first house. We knew when we wanted to buy our first good car cash, secondhand for that matter. And we just stayed the course. But the vision, every time it felt difficult, we just looked to the vision and we kept going. And so a lot of people used to look at our lifestyle and think we're not getting anywhere, but we knew where we were headed. And I'm sharing this with you to encourage those of you who are graduates, those of you who are about to be graduates, and those of you who have just started university. Your financial habits that you observe now will help you in the long term. My husband and I saved up for 4 years for our wedding. It was tough. We didn't go on holiday. We didn't buy any new clothes. We didn't, whenever people were getting married or having babies, we'd just send a voucher because we couldn't afford it. We were saving towards our wedding. And thank God that we paid for our wedding cash, everything about it. And I mean, if there are any African brothers here, Black African brothers, you know you must start saving now for lobola if you want to marry a Black girl. Just a heads up, he did too. And so after the wedding, literally a couple of months later, we had enough money saved up to even go to the World Cup in Brazil. When we came back from Brazil, we still had money left over, and we put down a deposit for our house. You know, so it pays to have a vision. It may not look good. It may be painful along the way, but I want to encourage you to start writing it down now. What is it that you want your money to buy you one day? So you're going to graduate, you're going to work. What do you want to do with your money? One of my biggest dreams still is to build my mom a mansion while she's alive. You know, I want to help my sister realize her dream of building 3 schools. Those are the things that I'd written back in the day already. So it's important. I'm emphasizing this because everything else is going to follow from your vision. I want to also spend a little bit of time talking about debt. And I ask, it's a question, it's not a statement, but is debt modern day slavery? The difference being that we're not walking around with chains that everyone can see. We are walking around with invisible chains. Why do I say that? Or what has led me to think of debt in that manner? If you really want to know who owns the car that you drive that is bought on hire purchase, or the house that you live in that is bought on hire purchase, just miss 1 or 2 months payments and the real owner will come knocking on your door. In this case, they'll pick up the phone and phone you. So my question is, if you really own it and you're really free, then why the reminder when you miss a payment of who the real owner is? That's food for thought. That's something for you to think about. Another thing with debt that makes me uneasy about it is that when we look at the statistics in South Africa, about 23% of South Africans, it could be less, because this was about a statistic of about 2 years ago, I think, about 23% of South Africans rarely have money. That means the rest of us are privately insolvent. We're broke. And the easiest way to determine whether you really have money or you are solvent is to take everything that you own. When I say own, I'm not talking about anything that you owe anyone else. So yes, you can take the market value of a property, you can take the trade-in value of a car and add it to your asset base. That's fine. But everything that you own, including your investments, including that painting from your dad, your grandfather, that is worth, I don't know how much. So tally up all your assets and then take your liabilities, all of them, if you have. I hope none of you have any liabilities. If you have liabilities, tally all of them. And now you must also include the total bond value of your house, how much you owe the bank and how much you owe the bank for your car. Now take the total of your assets, less the total of your liabilities, that number that you get. If it is positive, it is healthy, it means you are solvent. Of course, you can improve it. But if it is negative, you are privately insolvent. You don't have money. And you need to do something about it. So debt, you need to think very, very carefully about. Because sometimes saving towards something may work out better than the interest you have to pay when you borrow. And we'll have a look at an example later that will help you understand some of the angles around debt. So that's food for thought. Now, I want us to also touch on a little bit on the different service providers there are out there. Because some of the mistakes that we're making when it comes to our money is that we may not necessarily be engaging the right financial services provider for our needs. So this will help us have a look at who to talk to and for what. I've put there 3 financial services providers, Capitec, Sanlam, and Allan Gray, not because I'm affiliated with them or I get commission or anything. I'm not. They are for example purposes, and I emphasize that. So what you will see here is that we've got Capitec, that's a bank. We've got Sanlam, that's an insurance house. And we've got Allan Gray, that is an asset manager or an investment manager. What is the difference between the 3? The difference between the 3 is that you go to a bank for your transactional needs. So you put money away, you can withdraw it, you can make payments online, you can make purchases online, etc. That's the real reason for a bank. And if you want to be one of those people that want to be indebted, you can go borrow from the bank. That's why we interact with banks. An investment manager or an asset manager, we go to, like the name says, to invest, to put money away for a rainy day, for your future children, for your future car, your house, your mom's 60th birthday, your retirement savings, to fund Golden Key Society one day, whatever your goals are. But your goals will be driven by your vision. And then we've got insurance houses. These provide services of risk cover. And they cover us in the event of an unfortunate, unplanned event happening. Now, my question is, I wish I could interact with you guys, but hopefully we'll have a session one day where I can ask you questions, because I would have asked you, how many of you here sitting today have 32-day accounts, and you say that you are investing? Maybe it's time to rethink. And how do you rethink where your money is sitting? As a rule of thumb, and I'll give you the homework to go look at what the inflation rate is currently in South Africa. As a rule of thumb, if you're putting money away for the medium to long term, medium term being about 2 years plus, and long term being about 5 years plus. As a rule of thumb, you want to look at investments in an investment manager or asset management house that will give you returns that are higher than what we call inflation. What is inflation? Inflation is the cost at which goods and services increase at every year. So take, for example, a loaf of bread. When your parents were 10 years old, bread was, I think, 50 cents or something, they say. You will not even get a portion of a slice of bread for 50 cents. We're talking 12 Rand, 15 Rand, etc. That difference in price from what the price of bread was in 1993 and the price of bread in 2020 is what we call inflation. Why do I say that when you're putting money away, you want your returns to be higher than inflation? Because we want your money that you put in today to still have the same value when you take it out 10 years from now. I hope that's clear. If I'm not, ask me a question later during the Q&A session. So as a rule of thumb, if you're putting money away for the medium to the long term, you want your returns to be slightly higher than inflation to preserve what we call the buying power of your money. Now, I've often heard people saying they are taking out funeral policies as a form of investment. I'm not sure, because if you're investing, the joy of investing is that you can access your money while you're still alive and enjoy it while you're still alive. I'm not sure how a funeral policy you will enjoy while you're alive, because you need to die and you won't enjoy it. It's the people that are left behind if they get to enjoy it. So I say that because when I grew up, I mean, my mom had about 5 funeral policies. There's this advert that's always on TV at the wrong time that she used to listen to. And there's different kinds of adverts like that. Like, you know, there's someone always standing by a graveyard, always telling us that in the unfortunate event, will your family be able to buy groceries? We can give you airtime, we can do this. And my mom just thought she needs 5 of those things because for some odd reason, her kids can never bury her. One of the other reasons she gave was, but it's an investment. When she's gone, we can enjoy that money. I did a simple calculation with her. And I said, Mom, take out your calculator. First, she wrote down a list of all her policies and how much they would pay when she dies and how much she was paying in contributions. And so I said, take out your calculator. Let's say that you're going to live, this was about, I don't know, 10 years ago. And I said, let's say you're going to live until you're about 110. So take your premiums multiply them by 50 years, by 12 months and 50 years, and keep that figure. And then tell me how much they said they're going to pay out. And she was like, oh my goodness, I'm going to end up paying way more than what I'm going to get out. And I said, exactly. So you keep donating all this money and you've got 5 of these things. And that was her turnaround moment. And she rethought her strategy. I'm not saying funeral policies are wrong because they are risk cover. We don't know when we will leave this earth. Granted. But there are other ways. With the kind of premium that she was paying, she could have afforded what we call life cover. And with life cover, they will pay out a certain portion for the funeral, and there will still be money left over for my younger sister to continue her university studies, or whichever one of my sisters that wants to use that money to buy a car or buy a house or whatever. The total of those 5 premiums she was paying for a funeral policy was less than what she would have needed to pay for life cover. So again, why are we taking out these policies without an understanding? Do you see why I emphasized the vision? Because if you've got it written down and you say, in the event that something goes wrong with me, I want to leave, I'm a student right now, or I'm a graduate or whatever. I don't have enough now that should something happen to me, I want to leave a bit of cash for my mom or my sisters, or if you're married, your husband or your children. That's part of your vision. Because when you've got that blueprint, any financial services provider you interact with has got to talk to that vision. And if they don't, you take your vision and you walk away. I find it quite fascinating that we're always willing to talk to a financial planner, for example, that wants to sell us something that's not in our vision. And yet, when we go to a doctor, we don't allow the doctor to treat us for something that we're not sick of. That's something to think about. That we're quite liberal when it comes to our finances. Like anyone talks whatever they want, they pick up the phone, they sell us products, and we're just so gullible. And yet you never go to the doctor and you've got a migraine and they say to you, no, but I think I should give you treatment for your teeth as well. They don't look as white as they should. But we allow that with our finances. So I hope with this understanding, you will start thinking about which financial service provider to engage and for what service. Unfortunately, we don't have too much time to dive into the different types of things that you'll find at the different financial services providers. There's things such as financial advisors. Even there's 2 types. There's ones that are tied with certain institutions, and then there's ones that are independent. That's also worth thinking about, and how your decision making, how you get to who you use at the end. If we've got time, you can ask me questions about that. I want to talk about financial products. You'll notice that I'm taking you on a journey. We spoke about a vision. Why do you want to be financially independent? Why is money important to you? Write down your vision. That will help you write down your vision, and your vision will determine what your future relationship is with money. It will guide you. It's your own guideline for your money, now and going forward. It will help you decide who you interact with from a financial services provider perspective. And then there are what we call financial products with financial services providers. There's medical aid and there's hospital cashback plans. There's pros and cons of all of them. If you have a choice when you start with your employer, a medical aid is a good starting point. Hospital cashback, I know sometimes is often sold as it's a better option than medical aid because they give you cash for every day that you're in hospital, etc. But what happens when your procedure costs way more than the cashback option that they give you? And the cashback option is not indefinite. What happens if you have to stay in hospital for 3 months? Your medical aid would be crucial there. And your hospital cashback plan can help you for portions of your medical aid, for portions that your medical aid doesn't cover, for example. But this is just to give you food for thought. This is, it's almost a skeleton for you to fill up the meat and start reading up on these things and educating yourself. And then there's what we call retirement annuities, or pension funds or provident funds. I've often heard entrepreneurs say to me, I don't need a retirement annuity fund because I'm an entrepreneur. Speak to real entrepreneurs and they'll tell you how difficult the journey is. I'm talking to you today. I started my business in 2015. It was only at the beginning of 2019 that I started making a profit. I mean, at the end of 2019, actually. That's almost 4+ years of breaking even, of recording losses, of headaches, of near depression, of rejection, you name it. It is by far one of the most difficult journeys. The one thing that I kept on doing religiously was contributing to a retirement annuity. Why did I do that? Because, you know, the experience of one day I've got money, the next day I didn't have money. I didn't know if I'd continue as an entrepreneur until retirement age, because sometimes you want to give up. And I didn't want to get retirement age, for example, of 55 or 60 or 70, whatever the age is of when I decide to retire. I didn't want to get there. And I'm in the same situation as my parents with no money. You know, so a retirement annuity is a nice kitty that you keep your hands out of, and it continues growing while you have your side hustle as an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurship is not a replacement for saving up for your retirement annuity. And it's called, you know, one of my desires is that they rename it. The name retirement annuity can be misleading because people don't retire nowadays. They must call it something like a later life account or something. You know, it's one of those fallback things. It's one of those comfort things that when you log into your online account and you look, you're like, hey, you know, this month has been a tough month. I've paid bills, etc. But I'm not really broke, you know, because I've got a couple of hundred of thousands sitting somewhere. You know, so that's a great thing of having something like that. We've also got life insurance versus funeral policy. I gave you an example about that. As far as possible, especially in your positions when you start working, now some of you have an allowance. You know, it's worth considering. The earlier you start, the better the premiums. I think PPS, if I'm not mistaken, has something for students as little as 50 Rand or 100 Rand. I can't even remember, but that's life insurance. And it's got various types of covers. You don't need 7 funeral policies. I'm probably talking to my fellow Black sisters and brothers out there, because if you've got parents like mine that swore by funeral policies, it was like your bread and butter. Just tread carefully, probe a little bit more. with the premiums that you're paying for a funeral policy, for a payout of 100,000 or 50,000, could you potentially get a life insurance cover that is going to pay out 200,000 or 250,000 for the same kind of premiums, or 10 Rand more? Just find out. And then we've got the difference between investing and saving. Sometimes we use those words interchangeably, but I like to think of saving as, you know, putting away money for the short term. You know, you're looking at about 12 months and less, or 2 years and less. You save for baby showers. You save to go to a friend's wedding. I've got a fund that I save when I go to my in-laws. And I get there and I'm literally Mother Christmas, because I save every month, and then I'm clever because I cash that money into 10 Rand notes. And when I go home in the Eastern Cape, I literally make it rain with 10 Rand notes. Anyone needs anything? Hand out a 10 Rand. Anyone need anything? I hand out a 10 Rand. And can you imagine how good that makes me look, right? But it costs me nothing. It's money that I put away every month. And I know that my mother-in-law gets very excited because I fill up the fridge with groceries, etc. Your students, there's pressure on some of you that when you're coming home, what do you have? You know, help us out or whatever, through no fault of your own. Some of your situations are difficult. Some of your situations are okay. So then be a blessing when you get home. Save up 50 Rand or 100 Rand or whatever the case is, and buy hectic Christmas presents, you know, because you can. And then cash your money into 10 Rand notes. If people want to go out for ice creams or whatever, haul out those 10 Rand notes and make it rain with 10 Rands. It'll make you look good. Try it. So your savings account can be used for anything. We've also got a savings account where we do a Christmas lunch for charity, and we fund the entire Christmas lunch. That's saving. Some of some of the tricks that I learned about saving, I learned from my grandmother. She used to put money in her bed, between her base and mattress. I wouldn't recommend that, but if you must, start somewhere with your saving. You know, have jars. I mean, there are fancier things nowadays. Have a jar, put it in there, and take it in at the end of the year. Then we've got your medium term. There you can start investing, really. If you're leaving money for longer than 2 years, you can put it in a decent investment. I think some of them start as little as 250 Rand. And which investment, the question that always arises from people is, where do I put it? Which fund do I choose? If I can briefly tell you, the fund that you put it into is not nearly as important as answering these questions. The first one is, what is your appetite towards risk? Are you one of those people that will have a headache if you log into your account and it's decreased in value by a little bit, and you log in again tomorrow and it's increased a little bit? What's your appetite towards risk? Or you're one of those people that are like, I'm going all out with risk, I can handle it. You know, your risk appetite is very important. What are your goals? Remember, you've got a vision, but you need small goals to get there. What are your goals? So when you're investing this money, are you wanting to put it away for 2 years, for 3 years, for 12 months, etc.? Those two questions will help you decide which fund you must put it into. Not the other way around. You don't start with the fund. You start with your risk appetite and your goals, and you put a timeline to those goals. And then you go and look for a fund that speaks to those two things. If you're someone that can stomach a little bit of risk and you want to put your money away for 2 years, something like what they call a balanced fund. You will notice in the fund objective will say, this is suitable for someone with a medium risk appetite that wants to put away money for 2 to 3 years plus. That's what you do. So do you see how important it is to determine your goal and put a timeline on it and your risk appetite? And then you go out looking for funds that talk to that. This is a different way of managing your money. The control is in your hands. It's not in someone sitting in front of you and selling you. In fact, when you've got that in place, it's almost impossible for someone to sell you something that doesn't talk to your plan. And then when you are investing for the long term, we're talking 5 years plus. Again, you would need to determine that. And your risk appetite. Generally, as a rule of thumb, the longer the time period you have to invest, the greater the amount of risk you can afford to take on when it comes to investing. Now, investment vehicles. So what do you put your money in? There's different types of things you can put your money in, right? There's what we call unit trusts. Those you can find at an investment manager, Net Group Investments, Allen Gray, Investec, Coronation. There's various asset managers that have unit trusts. And then you've got exchange traded funds that you can invest in through the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, the JSE, that you get into directly. There's various types. There's the top 40. When they say the top 40, this index, and what these do is they track the stocks on the JSE. So the top 40 will track the top 40 stocks. What's the difference between that and a unit trust? With a unit trust, you've got a team of people that are analyzing which stocks to invest in. With an exchange traded fund, it will tell you what it's investing in. So it will say, for example, it's the resources index. That means that it looks at companies that are resource-based, right? If it says it focuses on financials, it means it invests in companies that are financial services providers. That's an ETF. And then you've got BE participation schemes, like your MTN, Zakhele Footies, your Sasol. Every now and again, they might want to diversify their investment and give a certain portion of their shares to the public. And they've got a criteria for that. So they'll call it BE participation schemes. Then you've got employee share schemes. In some organizations, when you've worked there long enough, or you've reached a certain performance level for that year, they allow you to buy shares in that company. That's another way of investing. But when you leave the company, you sell the shares and you take the cash and leave. And then you've got private equity deals. Private equity deals they can range from anything. If there is a bridge that the government of Zambia wants to build, they can actually invite people to tender for it, for example. And sometimes they don't even say you must tender. They just say bring a proposal. And if you've got the funding for it, you can invest in that bridge and then get your returns by putting a toll there that people pay every time they pass through there. That's private equity. And there's certain companies that are set up for private equity investments, such as Sango Capital, for example. One of the other ones as well is stokvels and group saving schemes. I belong to about 3 group saving schemes. 2 of them are in South Africa and one of them is outside South Africa. Why do I like such schemes? They are not my main form of investing, but it's nice to just have a common goal with a few people. There aren't more than 6 in the ones that I participate in, and they range from 2,000 Rand to 10,000 Rand a month. We all collect the money, and then we decide where we are putting that money in. Some of the kitties are sitting in unit trusts. Some of the kitties, we've put money in farms, and some of the kitties we're looking to go into property. Starting small, we might buy a small little flat somewhere and rent it out, and that's how we realize our returns. And then we've got trading, which includes Bitcoin. I'm hoping I won't get a question about this one. Is it good or is it bad? I don't know. I don't have the answer. But what I can tell you about these kind of things is that tread carefully, because a lot of them come in the form of network marketing. Recruit that one, who will recruit this one, who will recruit this one. Very often they are network marketing and not necessarily trading yourself. Then there are trading platforms where you are going online and you are buying and selling shares yourself, right? You can absolutely learn that skill. Do you know what you're doing? You would have to answer that question. Can you start small and teach yourself? Absolutely, no problem. Can you make money off it? I've seen people do it. Do I do it? I haven't started. I don't. Because I wouldn't potentially know what I'm doing. Maybe I'd probably get excited that the share for oil companies has gone down and I quickly buy, and then tomorrow it falls even worse. I'd like to believe I can stomach a bit of risk, but not that much risk. Again, the famous one being Forex trading. Yeah, teach yourself. I say teach yourself for the longest time before you, let's not call it play, before you explore with your own money. Teach yourself, learn, and then take it from there. Because there are professional traders and they are sitting in banks, they are sitting in investment firms, and their job literally is to execute what analysts have looked at for months and sometimes years, and come to a decision with portfolio managers. I'm not privy to that information when I'm sitting as just a mere trader with my laptop. So teach yourself and trade carefully. I'd like to end so we can open up for Q&A with an example. And this example will illustrate the returns that you can get in spending your money wisely. But it will also illustrate what debt can do. Let's call, there were 2 friends, an accountant and a chef. And they started to invest at they started to invest at the same time. Sorry, I'm not seeing my screen clearly. Okay, so two friends, an accountant and a chef. And they started to invest at the same time when they were 20, and both wanted to access their money at the age of 60. In fact, they made a decision to invest at the age of 20. So let's assume I'm 20 and Natasha's 20, and we sit and we decide that we're going to invest. And we want to access our money at the age of 100. So then they decided to invest 100 Rand per month and the interest that they receive per annum is 12%. Remember, it's an example. I'm not saying this is what's happening now. Let's look at what happens. So if you take the first column on the left-hand side, let's look at that first, right? The chef says, I am going to start at the age of 20. I'm starting today. We are 20 and I'm starting today. I'm going to invest 100 Rand, but I'm going to stop when I am 50. And the accountant says, no, man, I've still got time. I've just started working, want to enjoy my money, want to make it rain a little bit, want to get a Mercedes on debt. Yeah, man, I've worked hard. I just want to chill a little bit. I don't want to save yet. I think I'm going to wait until I'm 30 to save. So you get the scenario. The chef says, I'm starting today at the age of 20 with 100 Rand a month, and I'm going to stop when I'm 50. The accountant says, no, I'm starting 10 years from now when I'm 30, and I'm going to push until I'm 60. Right? So if you look at the number of years they both contributed, I'm now in the third column. They both contributed for 30 years. The chef contributed from the age of 20 until the age of 50. That's 30 years. The accountant contributed from the age of 30 until the age of 60. That's 30 years. The number of years for the chef that the money is growing is 40. Because at the age of 50, the chef did not withdraw the money. He just left it there. He stopped contributing at the age of 50, but he left it for another 10 years because he wanted to see what would happen. The accountant contributed from the age of 30 until the age of 60. So the number of years the money grows for the accountant is 30 years. I'm now in the second last column from the right, the column called actual amount invested or contributed. They both contributed 36,000 Rand, both of them. I hope you're with me. I'm going to repeat it one more time. They both contributed for 30 years, but at different times, and they contributed 36,000, both of them. Let's look at the returns at the age of 60. For the chef, he had accumulated just over 1.1 million Rand. For the accountant, she had accumulated just over 350,000. Why the difference? They both contributed 36,000. They both had 30 years for their money growing. Why the difference? The difference is the 10 years that the accountant delayed in starting. That is called by what we called compound interest. The 100 Rand that the chef started with at the age of 20 does not stop growing. Let's say the 100 Rand in 1 year produces 10 Rand. That 10 Rand gives birth to another 2 Rand. That 2 Rand gives birth to another 50 cents. I've just spoken about 100 Rand. How many 100 Rands did the chef contribute in the first 10 years that the accountant didn't contribute? That's what happens when you delay in starting. What you want is to start, no matter how small, and put it somewhere where it can grow, where it can earn money, even if it's a little bit of money, because as long as it is compounding, or compounding in simplest terms, interest, getting interest on interest, happy days. So the difference between 1.1 million and 350,000 is what I call the cost of waiting. Let's look at the reverse.
Sorry, Landi,
Imagine,
to disturb you. I just want to know how many minutes you need, because we have a lot of questions on the Q&A. So we're hoping to try and cover some of the questions.
no problem. I'm almost done. This is my second last slide.
Okay.
So what we see here, imagine you had taken out a loan of 36,000 Rand. And you know how sometimes it's so nice. They're like, no, take your time. Don't worry. You can have, I'm looking at the first, the row of the chef. Take your time. You've got 40 years to pay. Imagine just 12% interest. And that interest is even low. It's so low. Now interest is 15%, 20%, sometimes as high as 27%. Imagine you took out a loan of 36,000 Rand. They tell you take your time in paying, and you end up paying just over R1 million. Think about it. Think about debt very carefully and think about saving. Because it's the same coin, just different size. So I want to leave you with food for thought. And the food for thought is compound interest is the 8th wonder of the world. He who understands it, like the chef, will earn it. But he who doesn't, if you become a borrower of the 36,000, for example, you will pay that compound interest. And finally, I want to say to you that, I want to challenge you rather, to say that today you will do what others won't. So tomorrow you can do what others can't. Thank you so much. Thank you, Petronella. Over to you.
Oh, thank you so much. So now we're gonna do our Q&A questions. We're gonna try to cover as much as we can, but we have little time. So I'm just gonna try and answer and ask a few questions and ask Landi to answer them. So the first question is there good and bad debt?
I was hoping I wouldn't get that question. So I hear there is good debt. And people often say that good debt is something like a house, because otherwise you won't have a place to live in, etc. I don't know, but I hear the argument. So the argument is that for good debt, using it as an example of good debt, they often say that go and get a house. If your rentals are going to be 8,000 Rand, rather go and get a bond for a 2-bedroom house that you pay off, and that can end up being yours after, I don't know, 15 years, 20 years of living in it. It sounds good, and I hear the argument. What we don't plan for and what we assume greatly is that you will always have the income to service that debt. That's what that's the biggest assumption we make. So we make an assumption that I'm going to get this bond because, you know, I'm going to pay it in 20 years. Who ever saw COVID season coming right now? Maybe there are people that bought houses in December. So I don't know if I believe personally that there is good debt from a consumer perspective. Mm-hmm. From a business perspective, it's a totally different argument. But I'll leave that for you to think about.
Okay, thank you so much. So we have an interesting question here that asks, are banks the best financial institutions to invest money at compound interest, or is there other institutions that offer better compound interest?
Sure. If Natasha had not said we are live on YouTube and Facebook, I would have answered that question very honestly, but I'll be diplomatic. So a bank is an institution that you go to for transactional purposes. The bank doesn't really manage your money. Let me give you an example. When you give your money to Nedbank and you say you are putting it away in an investment product, Nedbank doesn't necessarily manage your money. They've got an asset manager called Net Group Investments. Now, my question to you would be, why don't you go to Net Group Investments directly? Because the bank acts as a middleman, for example, for Net Group Investments. So you also have the ability to go to Net Group Investments yourself. So a bank's strength is not in managing your money. A bank's strength is loaning out money, keeping your money for you. You know, that's their strength. Whatever else they can't do, they outsource to their asset manager. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you so much. And there's been more than one question that is talking about debt. Like, what if you're already drowning in debt? What can you do to either get yourself out of debt, or just how can you go about that situation?
Then you are in the right place. I was almost blacklisted as a student, believe it or not. And I was studying accounting. Can you imagine what a disaster that was? And I was almost indebted because my parents couldn't afford clothes for me, like the basic necessities, guys. So I took out an Edgar's card, you know, and then I got excited and I saw the YDE naked sale and I took out a plastic card there. And then I had people that really loved me, my dad's friends and stuff, that would send me money. And as the bank saw, as time progressed, that I was getting slightly more money, they gave me a call and said, we want to give you a loan for 5,000 Rand. And I was like, wow, that is free money. I am taking it. So, I mean, it was shambles. I couldn't service any of that debt. I was almost, as I said, I was almost blacklisted. And I was just in a hopeless situation. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about educating on finance. So first of all, to the people that are indebted and are here, do not despair. My starting point was make a list of all your debts, the balance, the interest rate, and how much they want you to pay on a monthly basis. And then look at realistically, not the fact that your aunt somewhere is going to give you money you're hoping. Realistically list how much you get on a monthly basis. If you get 1,000 Rand and your debt repayments are about 1,005, there is no point in saying that you're going to use that entire 1,000 Rand to pay off your debts of 1,500 commitments. You want to be realistic. You need to eat. You need toiletries. Toiletries are not a luxury. They're a must. You need to bath and smell all right and brush your teeth. And you need to eat. So to say you're going to fast is also not realistic. So what I would do is, it's going to be a tight season for you, but it will be worth it in the end. So if I had debts, let's say my repayments are 1,005 and I get 1,000 every month, I'd actually say I only have 500 Rand to service my debts. And then I would split that 500 Rand, starting with the one that has the highest interest rate, not balance, because the interest rate is what will make it grow more than it should. So the one with the highest interest rate, I would pay slightly more. And then I go down my list. Whenever I get extra money, I throw it in there. That's what I would do. 500 Rand you use towards all your other expenses, because what you're doing there is, when you're desperate, you can't think straight. So to say you're going to take the entire 1,000 and take it to your debts, you end up borrowing from other people again for your livelihood. So be realistic, and then also speak to those guys and tell them that, guys, I promise you, you don't say to them, you've got 500 Rand, because they'll want that entire 500 Rand. One creditor will want all of it. You say to that creditor, I've only got 80 Rand. I am so sorry. A creditor would rather take something than nothing. And when your finances change, then you also improve. That's how I could get myself out of my mess. I mean, there was some that I committed 50 Rand, and I couldn't believe it when I paid it off. It took me long. It was not easy, but whenever I'd managed. Can you hear me, Petronella?
Yes, we can. Yes, we can. Now it's
Okay.
better. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, so I hope that gives those students help, but the most important one being, do not despair, do not judge yourself. You will get out of it if you are committed to getting out of it.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for that. There's this interesting question that says, considering the volatile nature of the South African economy, is it advisable to convert your savings money into Krugerrands or and keep them as gold?
My question to that person would be, how stable do you think Krugerrands are as well? Because every form of investment has some risk attached to it. Even a stokvel. A stokvel, if you're not the treasurer or there are 3 signatories that you are not part of, what happens if they take that money and run tomorrow? You know, there's always an element of what I'm trying to say is there's always an element of risk. So I think my advice would be, yes, diversify. It is important. Rather than saying the economy is unstable of South Africa. The economy is unstable everywhere right now. And we all have our seasons. When South Africa is unstable, US is okay. When US is not okay, UK is all right. You know, so we all have our seasons. My thought would be diversify so that you also learn how different investments perform.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think I'm just gonna ask one last question because we're running out of time. So I saw 2 questions that we were wondering, how can one just start investing before graduation? Like, do you have tips that one can use or platforms that are very good to start saving at an earlier age or earlier time?
Absolutely. I mean, there is, I'm not sure about PPS's investment vehicle, but I know from back in the day rather, they used to say they've got products for students, specifically tailored for students. And I think you can start as little as 100 or 50. Now, please don't hold me to it. I don't know if it's an insurance or an investment. You just have to search. And I know Sanlam also used to have Sanlam Glacier. In fact, Glacier, let me correct myself. Glacier is the asset manager for Sanlam. They used to have premiums as low as 200 or 250. Alan Gray's minimum, I think, is 500 Rand. You know, so it's worth a shopping around. If you don't even have those 250s or those whatevers, then by all means, I agree you can use your savings pocket or whatever to accumulate that money to then take it to a savings vehicle where you meet the minimums.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I think shop around. What I'd like people to get from this is shop around. You're young enough. You know, I can't say at the age of 37 that I must still be trying to figure out where I must put my money because it's sitting in a sack at home. Then we need a special session for you if you are at my age and you still trying to figure out where to put money because you don't have anything saved, including pension, including, you know, but you guys you're young enough, you know, probe, find out, have the experience of sitting in front of a financial advisor of a bank and have them talk to you, and then set up an appointment, Google independent financial advisors in South Africa and sit with them and form an opinion for yourself, you know. And I'm available for people that I won't advise, but I can guide you, you know. If you drop me an email, you can get my details from Petronella. If you send me a WhatsApp, you'll probably get a response at 2 in the morning because I work better at night. But yeah, I'm more than happy to guide some of you that need that kind of guidance.
Thank you so much, Landi. Unfortunately, we can't answer all the questions, but what we can try to do is send the questions to Landi so that she can actually answer them, and then we can email the questions to all of you. We'll see how that will go. But thank you so much for the interaction. Thank you for the engagement. It's been amazing, and thank you so much, Landi, for sparing your time just to give us so much financial wisdom. And I'm sure all of us have enjoyed, and because I've been seeing the chat room, and a lot of people are very grateful for your time, and we just want to thank you so much. And I just want to extend our gratitude to the Golden Key Southern Africa for allowing us to use this platform as a way of engagement. So thank you so much. So I'll be able to send you Landi's details so that you're able to just get hold of her even via WhatsApp and be able to interact with her. So thank you so much, Landi. It's been an amazing session, and sorry everyone for going over time. I mean, yes, you know, the good things have to come to an end, but thank you so much for being with us till now. So I just hope everyone has a good evening. Thank you so much, Landi.
Thank you, Petronella. Thank you, your team as well. And thank you, everyone, for joining. All the best.